All right, this is chapter 8, perception interventions. Okay, so what are perceptions? Perceptions are cognitive interpretations of people, things, and events within your world. And perceptions are incredibly important. Remember, your perception is a part of that stress model. And if you perceive something to be stressful, then we're definitely going down this stress model. But if we identify, oh, it's not such a big deal, I'm not going to stress out about this, then we're done here and we're not going to have a stress response. So your perceptions of things around you, of stressors, very important. Let's talk about selective awareness. So what is selective awareness? It is literally choosing what interpretation of your surrounding world you will pay attention to. And for stress management, we want to realize that there is good and bad in every situation. We want to focus on the positive side of things. So we want to choose positivity. We want to choose it psychologically and physiologically as well. And for stress management, we want to de-emphasize the negative. We're not necessarily denying it. We know that it's there, but we're really focusing on the positives. We want to make sure that we make time for positive reflection, for a time in our lives where we're going through, something that's rather difficult. Let's try to learn something from that very difficult situation or event. Let's try to positively reflect upon that. And then, of course, we need to take time to smell the roses. So let's try to take time out of our busy, hectic schedules to enjoy and appreciate life, because it's so short. All right. Make sure that we put things into perspective. So when you encounter minor stressors, you should ask yourself, is this going to matter a year from now, 6 months from now, a week, a day, 30 minutes? And usually most minor stressors, they don't last that long. And our reaction is far more detrimental to the actual event that is occurring in our life. So we're causing that major physiological response for something very little. So, literally, let's not sweat the small stuff. And then coming back to positivity, really important that we stay positive, we stay optimistic. I really love this quote because it's 100% true. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So again, coming back to those minor stressors, that minor stressor might be that 10%. And, if you have that big physiological reaction, well, there you go. So one of my favorite quotes. Moving on to having an attitude of gratitude. So, being grateful and thankful for everything you have going on in your life. There's always something, that you're unhappy with or something that you wish that you could change. But, to be honest, there is probably someone that is looking at your life, wishing that they had everything that you have. So be grateful and thankful for everything that you have. So when it comes to developing an attitude of gratitude, we want to focus on the things that we should be grateful for. Easily changing the I have to do this into I get to do this. Instead of saying I have to write this research paper, or I have to go to work, or I have to study for this exam, you can say I get to write this research paper, I get to study for this exam. I have the opportunity to study for my degree. I have to go to work. No, you get to go to work. You get to make money to support yourself. And especially right now in the time of COVID, a lot of people have lost their jobs. So let's just be grateful for all of the things that we have right now. Still talking about being grateful, stress is caused by, or even having a negative mood is caused by living in the past or living in the future. You know, when I have this, you know, when I get my degree, when I accomplish X, Y, and Z, or maybe even living, you know, back when I used to do this. You know, we're not there yet. Why can't we just live in the now? Let's focus on what we have instead of what we don't have. Because if we put in all of this energy on focusing on what we don't have, it's definitely going to cause some distress and disappointment in our lives. So when we're living in the past or living in the future, we're looking at our current situation as a hindrance rather than as an opportunity. So again, let's look for all the positives. Let's think about all the things that we're grateful for. And I promise you, you know, your attitude is going to change and your stress level might even change. And actually for our lab activity, we actually have a gratitude exercise. So these are a few ways to get an attitude of gratitude. And like I mentioned, we will have a lab activity that involves gratitude. But here are a couple of things that you can do. You can wake up every day and express to yourself what you're grateful for. You can say it out loud. You can write it down. And if you like to journal, I recommend starting a gratitude journal. Notice the things that you're grateful for, proud of, excited for, and we don't do this enough. You know, we're always so hard on ourselves. Make sure that you acknowledge yourself for what you have done and accomplished in the last day, week, month, year, and please stop comparing yourselves to others. Comparison is the thief of joy. So just focus on you and what you're doing. And then make sure to give yourself credit. You're working really hard, especially right now, again, during COVID. You know, online school is really difficult. You know, work is difficult. Physical distancing is difficult. And you're getting through it. You're adapting. You're getting stronger. So give yourself credit for it. Moving on to optimism again. So optimism, positivity, and gratitude are going to be really big themes of this lecture. So being an optimist actually saves your life, and being a pessimist drains it. So this is an older study, but it's still very much valid. A 2009 study of 97,000 women showed that the more optimistic people were, the lower their rates of mortality for all illnesses. So just like how we talked about mood in chapter 2 and that salivary antibody, your mood and being positive does have an effect on your health. So we're always choosing optimism, try to choose positivity. Moving on, let's talk about different personality types and traits. So the first personality type is type A personality. And type A individuals are more likely to develop coronary heart disease. And these are some of the behaviors that are very much associated with type A. They're very competitive, they tend to be aggressive, they have a sense of time urgency, they're impatient. Sometimes there might be a little bit of free floating hostility. We don't know where exactly that's coming from. And then there might also be a certain level of insecurity within that individual. A lot of perfectionists tend to be type A. And on the flip side, looking at individuals that are type Bs, these are the exact opposite of type A. These folks are completely calm, cool, and relaxed. They don't have a free floating sense of hostility or a sense of time urgency. They're going with the flow and, you know, they're having a good time. And this is just a little cartoon that I love to share just because I think it really reflects type A and type B personalities really well. So we have our time urgent, impatient type A person. You know, they're looking at their watch, they're probably late for work, who knows? And the type B person says, whoa, whoa, slow down, friend. Don't you know that sometimes you have to stop and smell the flowers? And then our type A person goes and literally smells all the flowers. And since they're super competitive, they need to become the flower smelling champion. And then our type B person is sitting in the corner rocking themselves in a fetal position. But, and I just thought this was kind of funny. And there's nothing wrong with being a type A individual. There are a lot of individuals that are type A. I personally am a type A person, so I completely understand what this feels like. My mom is a type A person, and this is her right here. And it is possible to change type A behavior, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, but really quickly, let's talk about some research findings on type A patterns. So they conducted a study on nurses and teachers. They were looking specifically for type A and type B individuals, and they found that type A's tend to experience more job stress. So type A hospital employees had more health problems than other employees, and they were more likely to suffer from coronary heart disease and obstruction of coronary vessels caused by what? Atherosclerosis, that is correct. And they also found that type A's take longer to recover from stressful events than type B's. All right, so coming back again to that type A behavior. So again, they're hostile, they're angry, and for individuals that want to change that, it's totally possible, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort in order to change your behavior pattern, and you must be highly motivated to change. So if you or someone you know wants to modify their type A behavior, here are a few things you can do. You can reward type B behavior while ignoring or punishing type A. Setting realistic, weekly, and attainable goals, because usually our type A folks try to do way too many things at once, and they can't really reach their goals in a timely manner. So we need to make sure we separate the needs from the wants for those goals. I want to achieve this, but I need to do this first. So let's get those needs out of the way, and then we can focus on the wants. And then really trying to slow down and not take things in a hurry. A lot of type A individuals will try to finish other people's sentences because, they get impatient. That's something that's pretty common. Other things that individuals can do to reduce type A behavior is to journal about it, journal about the things that frustrate or anger you. Really try to slow down, what is the sense of time urgency here? Take a deep breath before engaging in difficult activities. Try to stop interrupting people when speaking. And then engaging in relaxing exercises, whether they are relaxation techniques or participating in physical activity. Okay, so in a previous lecture, I mentioned a cancer-prone personality type. So these are the other behavior patterns that are, we still see this quite often, but usually type A and type B are more common. So type C personality patterns, this is the personality type that is a cancer-prone personality. And these individuals, they're pathologically nice. They don't know how to express their emotions. They suppress them. They tend to avoid conflicts. They have an exaggerated need to be accepted socially, and they have a poor ability to cope with stress. Our type D behavior pattern, this is also associated with the development and death of coronary heart disease. So these individuals are usually anxious, they're depressed, they're insecure, and they have a really hard time expressing their feelings. They also usually tend to be more pessimistic, so they see the glass as half empty rather than half full. And usually just very negative individuals, type Ds. All right, so some other personality characteristics, resiliency. Resiliency is super important. Have you ever wondered why you see an individual that grows up in a less than ideal condition such as, growing up in poverty, or parents that were on drugs, or, parents that were abusive, and then these individuals grow up to be very successful. Well, these individuals are resilient. They have the ability to identify and make use of their strengths and assets, and they respond to challenges. So they respond to these stressors that help them grow as an individual. So I encourage all of you to really hone in on your strengths in order to become resilient in whatever situation that you're in. And I included, this rose growing from the concrete, because I think that's a phenomenal example of resiliency. Individuals that are resilient, they tend to be happier, they're optimistic, so they see the glass as half full rather than half empty. They are creative, they practice self-control, and they also have an attitude of gratitude. Moving on to hardiness. So remember back in chapter 1, we talked about these stress theories. There was the hardiness theory that stated that one's attitude toward the events determined if there was a stress response. So individuals that have a hardy personality see stressors as challenges. And individuals that are hardy, they have a state of mind that includes these 3 C's. So commitment, control, and challenge. So they are committed to reaching their goal or to involve themselves in whatever event is going on. They believe that they have a certain amount of control over the event, and they can influence the course of events. And then big one here, like I mentioned previously, they see it as a challenge, and this challenge will stimulate personal growth. And hardy individuals can withstand stressors. And there's a lot of research going on about hardy personalities. Are people just born hardy, or is this something that you can work hard on, just like with trying to switch from those type A personality behaviors to more type B? Personally, I think that anyone can become hardy. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of determination, because changing behaviors takes a lot of time and effort, but I think people can become hardy. Okay, moving on, let's talk about the self. So when I mean the self, we're talking about us, we're talking about our self-esteem and self-efficacy. So self-esteem is how you regard yourself. Hopefully you regard yourself in a, nothing like this, but this is an example of, someone that has a low self-esteem. I am a terrible person, but, I hope you don't regard yourself like that. And then we have self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is the belief that one can be successful at doing something. So how you regard your ability to accomplish a task. So, we have low self-efficacy if you say that I'm terrible at basketball. And self-esteem and self-efficacy, but especially self-efficacy, is really important when it helps specifically in recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, as well as occupational stress. So coming back to self-esteem, so poor self-esteem is related to drug abuse, irresponsible sexual behavior, and other unhealthy activities. Self-esteem is learned. It's learned through societal standards, through friends, and through family. And it is greatly affected by how we are treated and judged by others. And having poor self-esteem can lead to the development of stress-related illnesses. Low self-esteem can lead to isolating oneself, which therefore can lead to the lack of social support. And then we have a development of a stress-related illness, because now we can't cope with that stress because we don't have enough adequate social support. But the nice thing about self-esteem is that it can be learned and it can be relearned. So we want to make sure that we have good self-esteem, and good self-esteem is essentially a prerequisite for confidence, and confidence is essential for stress management, because if you don't feel confident with your skills, then chances are that you're not going to be able to be able to achieve your stress management goals and to be able to decrease, your physiological symptoms, or decrease, the amount of stressors that you're experiencing in your life through time management. So good self-esteem, prerequisite for confidence. Moving on to the locus of control. So locus of control is the perception of the amount of personal control you have over the events that transpire in your life. And there are two types of locus of control. We have external locus of control and internal locus of control. So external locus of control, this individual believes that they have very little control over the events that occur in their life. And they usually take very little action to control their life because they believe that their actions will be fruitless. Nothing's going to come of it. I can't change anything. And then we have internal locus of control, and that is the perception that one has a good deal of control over their life events. And, sometimes individuals have a good locus of control in one area of their life, such as their physical health or the financial aspect of their life, but their mental or emotional health can be suffering because they feel like they don't have control over their mental and emotional health. Coming down here in red, the co-creator perception deficiency, or CCPD. So this describes, individuals who believe that they either have total control or no control at all, and both are faulty perceptions. It is impossible to have total control over a situation or no control at all. So usually in events in our life, there's usually, a tiny bit of control that we have over specific things. Whether it's over the event itself or how we react to it. One more thing that I want to mention before I move on is that with locus of control, with control comes responsibility. So individuals that have an internal locus of control are taking responsibility and action over the things that happen in their life. So let me just give you a quick example. So an individual with an external locus of control will say, I failed this test because I didn't have enough time. So they are blaming their bad score on the time and not, being accountable for not studying when they should have. So they are blaming their successes and failures on things that are outside of themselves. Individuals with internal locus of control, they would say, I didn't do so well on this test because I didn't adjust to the time constraints. So people with an internal locus of control will accept responsibility for their successes and their failures. Moving on, let's talk about anxiety. Okay, so why is anxiety in this chapter? Because it's a faulty perception. Anxiety is an unrealistic fear resulting in psychological and physiological arousal, and it also pairs with behaviors to avoid or escape the stimulus. And I included this because I think it's fabulous for individuals that have anxiety. And if you're human, you have experienced anxiety at one point or another in your life. So I am not anxious. I am just extremely well educated about all of the things that can go catastrophically wrong. So we have different types of anxiety. So the first is trait anxiety, and this is just general anxiety. There isn't a specific source of the anxiety, and we're just kind of feeling anxious for no reason. I recommend if you're feeling this type of anxiety and you don't know what's causing it, I recommend that you go talk to somebody about it, because this isn't something that happens on a regular basis. And I recommend, reaching out to a mental health professional, a therapist, And like I mentioned in our previous lecture, there are resources for you here on campus that are absolutely free for San Jose State students at the counseling center on campus. Moving on, let's talk about state anxiety. So state anxiety is temporary and or specific. So it could be something like test anxiety. You know, you only get anxious, you know, maybe on, well, definitely on the day of, you know, right before that test, you're sitting in your desk and you're waiting for the teacher to pass out those testing packets. Maybe even a couple of nights before leading up to the test, you're having, you know, some trouble sleeping. But once you've taken the test, usually the anxiety will subside. So this usually goes away, it's temporary. Moving on to panic disorder. So panic disorder refers to a condition in which people experience feelings of terror that strike suddenly and repeatedly with no warning. Moving on to social phobia. So social phobia is an intense, persistent fear of being watched and judged by others. And then specific phobia, this is a fear of a very specific stimulus. And there are really so many different phobias out there, you know, fear of clowns, fear of heights, fear of spiders, fear of losing, and, you know, the list can really go on and on for phobias. All right, so how can I stop my anxiety? So a few different ways, and I'm going to cover, you know, things that you can do to help with your anxiety. So I believe I have 3 slides on this. So the first is environmental planning. So adjusting the environment to avoid the anxiety-provoking stimulus or to be better able to confront it. So for example, if you have anxiety about going to the dentist, you know, you really can't avoid the dentist because, you know, you need it for your teeth and mouth health. Bring a friend with you to the dentist and they can help ease your anxiety just by having some social support there. All right, relabeling. So you can give the anxiety-provoking stimulus a new label that changes your perception. So if you don't like to get your blood drawn, you know, instead of saying that the phlebotomist is going to stick this needle in my arm and take my life source away, you can relabel it as I'm getting my blood drawn to find out how healthy I am and how I can either improve or maintain that. Moving on to self-talk. So this is using positive self-talk. So making statements to yourself that focus on the positive aspects of a potentially anxiety-provoking event. And self-talk can really, so many forms of it, even just, you know, telling yourself, good job, you're doing this, you can do it, is excellent. Moving on to thought stopping. So when you recognize that you are experiencing an anxious thought, you can redirect your attention elsewhere, or you can literally say stop or imagine a big red stop sign and then try to redirect your attention elsewhere. And then we have something called systematic desensitization. This is imagining or experiencing an anxiety-provoking scene. This is done in very small steps and engaging in a relaxation exercise when you're able to do so. And this is actually something that's more commonly done with a therapist, specifically for individuals that have pretty severe phobias. So for example, if we have someone that is has a phobia of they have a phobia of spiders, so they have arachnophobia. First, you know, showing them a picture of a spider, and this moves in baby steps. So first we would show them the picture of the spider, and then eventually we would get them into a room with a spider that's, you know, in an enclosure, and then eventually having them hold the spider. But this is done in even smaller steps than that. That was very large jumps there. So very small steps in order to desensitize yourself to that specific phobia. Okay, this is an excellent technique. This is called grounding. This isn't in your textbook, but this is a phenomenal anxiety reducing technique. So the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. So if you ever feel anxious, this is what you should do. You need to name 5 things that you can see in the room that you're in. So, you know, I can see my laptop, my water bottle, my glasses, my book, my pen, and then 4 things that you can feel. You know, I can feel the chair on my back, my feet on the floor, the air conditioning hit my face, my watch up against my skin. And then you can list 3 things that you can hear right now. You know, the buzzing of the refrigerator, the air conditioning unit, you know, the birds chirping outside. 2 things that you can smell right now. And if you can't smell anything, you can list 2 things that you like the smell of. And then 1 thing that you can taste. So let's say you just brushed your teeth, you can still taste the mintiness in your mouth. Or if you don't taste anything at all, you can name one of your favorite flavors, or you can name 1 good thing about yourself. But anyways, you would keep repeating this exercise, and every time you repeat it, you would list off different things. So for the 5 things, I would list off 5 completely different things that what I had listed previously. So we'd keep naming different things each time until the feelings of anxiety are gone. So this is literally grounding you. This is making you mindful and aware of the things that are going on around you, drawing you away from the feelings of anxiety. And again, if this technique is brand new to you and you do get anxious sometimes, I highly recommend trying this. Moving on to cognitive restructuring. So coming back to selective awareness. So choosing what we want to focus on. So this video link, this is about a man. His name is Bob Wieland, and he lost his legs in Vietnam. And he finished this marathon in 79 hours and 57 minutes. He came in last place. And I know some of you might be thinking, big deal, you know, lots of people without legs run marathons, but this gentleman completed the LA Marathon on his hands. He didn't have prosthetic limbs. So he completed a full marathon on his hands, which is astounding. So for Mr. Wieland, you know, he decided not to focus on, you know, the fact that he didn't have his legs anymore, the fact that he couldn't do this anymore or do that. He is focusing on the things that he could do and the things that he wanted to do, which is incredible. And, you know, I know for a lot of us, we tend to focus on the things that we don't have or the things that we can't do. But, you know, are you going to choose to focus on the things that you supposedly, air quote, can't do? Or are you going to try to make them happen? You know, Mr. Wieland was focusing, you know, on the fact that he's still alive, he can still move, and I can still do all of the things that I couldn't do before, you know, just without my legs, which is amazing. And I know a lot of individuals don't have that mindset, and I know it's incredibly difficult. For example, I have a personal story. One of my uncles tragically lost his arm just right below his shoulder in a work accident. And his mindset, he selectively chose to focus on the negative, all the things that he couldn't do anymore. And he is depressed, and he stays inside his house, you know, 24/7, 365 days a year. And he still has both of his legs. He's still alive. He's okay, but he's choosing to focus on the fact that he lost his arm, and he can't do anything. Well, he thinks he can't do anything anymore. So, you know, we need to make sure that we are being selectively aware and we're focusing on the things that we still can do. And again, you know, still having that attitude of gratitude. This is another video, and if you guys are interested, I can post this. But this is just a video about adaptive CrossFit, and, you know, a big group of individuals getting together, talking about different circumstances that put them in the place that they are now. So how they ended up with their injury or disability. And, you know, all of these people are doing a ton of stuff that, you know, able-bodied people, you know, either choose not to do or think that they can't do it. So this is just, it's really heartwarming, really pulls at your heartstrings. Okay, moving on to toxic thoughts. So when we are being, you know, selectively aware, when we're you know, trying to think about stuff that goes on in our life, usually these toxic thoughts will start to creep in. You know, this is what we're trying to battle when we're trying to cognitively restructure our thoughts. And these toxic thoughts originate from repeated exposure to feelings of shame and guilt in early adulthood. So there was a study that was conducted at the University of Iowa, and they observed parent-child interaction over several days. And they noticed that for the parents that gave, you know, an average of 4 negative comments for every positive one, the conclusion, you know, they saw that those children were having more negative or toxic thoughts. So these toxic thoughts are actually a conditioned response. Wild, right? Here are some different types of toxic thoughts. We have pessimism, and we are looking at the worst in every situation. Blaming, we are shifting the responsibility for circumstances to somebody else. Perfectionism, we are imposing above human standards on ourselves. And then polarized thinking, we are looking at everything as black or white, yes or no, we're on the program or we're off the program. There's no gray area. There's nothing in the middle there. Then we have shoulding. So, you know, I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. You know, we are breaking our own rules. And when we break our own rules, we get upset. We start to feel guilty. But you know what? We can't go back. You know, when we should have done something or shouldn't have done something, we can't go back. So why are we going to keep beating ourselves up about it? And then when we talk about magnifying and catastrophizing, so magnifying is blowing problems out of proportion, and catastrophizing is making the worst out of a situation. So these are distortions that involves expectations that the worst will happen or has happened based on a slight incident that is nowhere near the tragedy that is made out to be. So for example, you know, you make a small mistake at work and you are convinced that it will ruin the project that you're working on, that your boss will be furious and you'll lose your job. But in reality, you know, that's not what's happening at all. So when it comes to cognitive restructuring, the goal is to favorably alter the current frame of mind to a less threatening perception. So we want to move away from a negative, self-defeating attitude to a positive one, which may then allow the initiation of the steps toward a peaceful resolution. So these are the steps of cognitive restructuring. So step one is to bring awareness. So we need to identify, you know, the stressors that are causing these negative, toxic thoughts. So best way to do that is to log all of your stressors, and we're actually going to have you do that this semester. And I'm going to put out video directions for this next week. So once we identify the stressors, you know, we have brought awareness to the situation. We know where the stem of that toxic thought is coming from. So we need to reappraise the situation and continue to reappraise it. You know, keep thinking about it over and over. You know, is it really that bad? You know, what are some things that we can do? Talk to yourself. And then adopt a new frame of mind. You know, trying to adopt a positive attitude versus a pessimistic attitude. And then finally, evaluate your new frame of mind. Is this new attitude working? If it is, great. If not, let's bring it back to the drawing board here. So what should we do with toxic thoughts? Very similar to, those anxiety-provoking thoughts, stop them. Whether it's through thought stopping, through a psychological technique, or physical technique, you stop yourself right then and there in your tracks. Hopefully you're not doing anything, don't do this when you're driving, but, for some people it does help, you clap or you literally say stop out loud. That seems to help. And then of course, practicing cognitive restructuring. And then for some thoughts, some thoughts are just going to be there and they're not going to go away. It's impossible to cognitively restructure all of our thoughts. So at that point, accept their existence and become determined not to let them control you, let them pass. So this includes a component of mindfulness, and we'll talk about mindfulness later on, I believe in chapter 10, if I remember correctly. Okay, so this is going to be our short segue into the next chapter that we're going to cover, interventions. But just to get you all thinking about questions to ask yourself when you do feel like you're getting stressed out. First question, what is the source of this feeling? Where is the stress coming from? Is it academic stress? Is it family stress? Is it work stress? Is it relationship stress? Am I stressed out because I'm sick? Hopefully not from COVID, but, just a regular cold. How is this stress affecting me? Is it affecting me physically? Am I getting tension headaches? Is it affecting me mentally? Am I having a lot of brain fog? Emotionally, do I feel anxious? Do I feel worried? Do I feel sad? Do I feel angry? And then coming back to the source of the feeling, what can I control and what is out of my control? So are there things that you can do to make the stressor or the stress go away? If there are things that are in your control, do all of the things so the stress goes away and you feel better. If there aren't, and sometimes that'll happen, focus on what you can control and focus on your perception of the situation. A big thing here, will anything change if I worry about it? Worrying usually doesn't do a darn thing. It usually doesn't change anything. And it just makes you feel, physiologically and mentally and emotionally worse. Then ask yourself, what do I need to do in order to de-stress? So in that moment, are there things that you can do to cope with that stress right in that moment? Usually diaphragmatic breathing is a really easy go-to. There are a couple of other relaxation techniques, mindfulness relaxation techniques, meditation, things that you can do right then and there. And then we also need to think about the long term. What can I do in the long term so this doesn't keep happening? And this usually goes down to planning ahead and managing your time appropriately. And so we're really going to talk about interventions and things that you can do and talking about the roadmap of stress in chapter 5. And if you have any questions about this lecture, please let me know.